all my life, I just wanted to be thin, cool and acceptable. And all of a sudden I met this thing called cocaine and it was my solution to my life.
What did rock bottom look like for you?
I just caught myself in the mirror and I was like, how did we get from that 18-year-old girl on Australian Idol with the blonde hair and all the opportunities to this? And I just knew in that moment that if things didn't change, I was going to die.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Life Uncut. I'm Brittany.
And I'm Laura.
And today we have an incredibly powerful episode with Kate DeAraugo. Now, you might have heard of Kate's name. Back in 2005, she was the winner of Australian Idol. But what happened to Kate after wasn't the fairy tale that we are all led to believe will happen. Kate has described herself as being a junkie at her lowest point on the bathroom floor.
This is a story about the demons that she was fighting at the time. Kate talks about addiction in this episode. She talks about addictive personalities and how that unfolded in her life. She was arrested. She was charged for drug driving. And she also found herself in incredibly abusive relationships. This conversation is one that I think if you have ever had a predetermined idea of what addiction is, this is something that I think will really open your eyes as to how people who are suffering from addiction or who are addicts themselves, how they experience life and the reasons why someone may be led down that path.
Also, just the way she speaks so openly about how you can go from being a beautiful, bubbly, blonde, confident, successful 18-year-old to a meth addict is something that a lot of people think, how could you possibly get there? Like, what could have gone on in your life to have gotten there? It truly is a story not just about the lowest of lows and hitting rock bottom, but it's the highs and the way she pulled herself out of it and got her life back on track to live now a completely fulfilling, healthy and loving life. Kate, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
No worries, girls. Thanks for having me.
We start every episode the same, and that's with an accidentally unfiltered story. And we just said, Kate, do you have an embarrassing story? And your response to that, which was funny in itself, you were like, I was a drug addict for a better part of a decade. Of course I have embarrassing stories. And then it made me think, I was like, is it appropriate to ask that question? But we're going to do it anyway. And you can tell us whatever embarrassing story you feel comfortable with.
As I said, I've got a few, but probably one of the more appropriate ones is the Young Divas were on tour. And I, as you can imagine, we're meant to come out full of attitude and strutting on stage down this set of stairs. And I was full of attitude and sass, and I just went face first down the stairs. So that was pretty embarrassing.
I love that you said I was a drug addict. I have so many, but your embarrassing story was before that?
Oh, it was probably during, but yeah. All
was it?
Matches in. Yeah.
Kate, like there's so much about this, like your life and where you're at now that we want to unpack and understand. And it's really beautiful how vulnerably you speak about the lessons that you've learned and where you are now in life in this recovery. But I would love to go back to 2005. I'd love to go back to your experience on Idol. And, you know, this is for anyone, if you don't remember, this is such a pinnacle time in reality TV. Casey Donovan was the winner the year prior of Australian Idol in 2004. And it was like the height of viewership of Australian reality TV. So you really are kind of plucked from obscurity and then put onto the absolute mass centre stage where everyone in Australia knows who you are and what you're doing. What was that period of your life like?
Well, I mean, I was 18 and a kid and had really no concept of what I was doing. And I'd auditioned 2 years before as well and got not through the front, I didn't get through the front door. So I guess I spent a lot of it pretty disassociated from my body. And I know that's really sad, but I talk about that a lot. Like, I was a kid and a young adult that was just so riddled with fear and imposter syndrome and all of that stuff that I just was forever in fear that I was going to wake up one day and someone was going to say, Kate, this is a big giant mistake. If you could just fuck off, I hope I'm allowed to swear here. Sorry.
You can swear all you like.
I try really hard not to. So yeah, it was a crazy time. But it was also one of the most exciting times. And people always ask me, would you do Idol again? And Idol blame this and Idol blame that. And I always say, yes, it was a difficult time for me, but it also gave me the opportunities to do the things that little girls dream of, I got to sing in front of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. I got to sing at grand finals. I got to sing all over Australia and do incredible things. And I wouldn't give that back for the world.
What did it do for your confidence at such a young age? You said you applied twice and didn't even get through the front door. So I'm assuming that when you did win, you were not expecting it. But at only like 16 and 17 years old, getting knocked back, thinking that you're good enough to go and apply for this, but them saying like, we don't even want to hear from you. Did that set you up with any sort of lack of confidence before you even got started?
Yes and no. I think, look, to be honest, I wasn't going to go to the third audition. I had no intentions of going. I was living on the Gold Coast at the time and I was running pub crawls for backpackers and I was on the Sunshine Coast hungover, the truth is. And my singing teacher rang me and said, get your ass in the car and get to those auditions, just to see if you've improved from the year before. So I didn't. Probably the third year, I went in with a really different attitude. Like the world didn't rely for me on me getting through. It was just to see if I'd got any better and could get a little bit further than the year before.
You just said then that you had auditioned and you were hungover. Was there already, at 18, do you recognise that you already had issues with alcohol or substances prior to doing Idol, or do you think that it was kind of enmeshed in that time?
I mean, I've done everything to the extreme since I was forever. My first experience with addiction started with food when I was a little kid, you know what I mean? Like I just did everything to the absolute extremes always. So when I drank too much. When I ate too much. When I was in a relationship, I loved too much. Like I just do everything too much. Look, I wasn't in any kind of dark addiction by that point, but I guess the behaviours were already there.
When you do something like reality TV, and I mean, you know, we've spoken about it a bit because we've had our own experiences with kind of living very normal lives and then all of a sudden having everybody in the country having an opinion on the way you look, the way you talk, I mean, in your case, the way you sing. Like there's so many things that you get criticised and critiqued on. What did that do for you? And when you say you already struggled with, you know, overeating at that time when you were younger, like, and already struggled with body confidence issues, going and putting yourself out there on a platform where so many people have an opinion on the person that you are, what did that do to you?
It destroyed me, to be honest. Like I had already through high school and primary school always struggled with my weight and really just hated the body that I lived in for as long as I could remember. And I guess, you know, I'd picked up lots of bits of information and situations that had helped me confirm that I wasn't okay in the body that I was in for years. And then I stepped into this world where people thought it was totally acceptable and they had the right to comment on the body that I had on a really public platform. And I didn't realise at the time, but it became trauma. Like it became trauma for me. You know, people, every time I looked at something, no one was talking about my singing or my voice or music. They were talking about the size of my ass in a pair of jeans.
Yeah, wow.
Well, I guess it just becomes like a core message and a learnt thinking. You know, that was just my thinking, that it was just drilled into me that what was considered beautiful and acceptable was that unattainable skinny look. And like it didn't matter how many hours I spent on a treadmill or how many bits of lettuce I ate. Like I was never going to look like that. Like it just wasn't achievable for me. So I just lived in this world where it didn't matter what I did. I just didn't feel like I was good enough.
Going from this, so like, I mean, I'd love to kind of get an understanding of like what that period was, because you've come out, you've won Idol. There are so many opportunities that open up for you in that point, but there are only opportunities if you're able to seize them and make the most of those opportunities. What happened for you? Were you able to be fully engaged? Were you at a point where it was too challenging to, like, what was going through your mind and what happened like in a sequence after that?
Oh, so much happened. But look, and I just do want to say, like, I talk about these experiences really openly and honestly, but I don't ask for, like, it's not a pity. I don't feel like I've done all, like, I've come out the other side of it and I'm okay. But, you know, it was hard. Like I had a record label and a management company that wanted me to look a certain way, and I would get in trouble for not being a certain size. Like we would go on a photo shoot, especially once I hit the Young Divas, we would go on a photo shoots and I wouldn't fit into clothes. And again, that's super damaging for a young girl. I would show up, but I would just show up riddled, as I said, with so much fear and anxiety and just hatred for myself. And it's hard to be present and do your best work when you, like, that's your baseline.
Were the record label and your management very open about the fact that you needed to lose weight? Is that literally, there's no scooting around the edges? It was like, hey, to be successful, you need to trim down.
They didn't say it in that many words, but they may as well have many times. And look, it was acceptable to do so in that time. Like, people could tell you, like, people would openly say, you got to lose weight, or, you know, and I remember I did lose weight at one point, and the head of the record label at the time come up and said, Kate, you're on the right track, just keep going, you know.
Oh, wow. Right.
So yeah, it was just okay. And look, I had my first major surgery around my body when I was 19. I had full body lipo from head to toe, which was certainly pretty supported by both record label and management at the time.
At 19?
I don't recommend it. Well, it wasn't the solution either, you know what I mean? Like, it was a quick fix, and it sorted some things out momentarily, but it didn't deal with the core of the issue, and it didn't deal with the internal world. Like, it didn't take any of that away. Yeah. I woke up and that thinking and stuff was still there. So, yeah, I guess, and look, in amongst all that, that's when I met drugs. And that's when the drugs then became my new solution to all of those problems that I'd carried around forever until they weren't.
When you say you met drugs, do you think that was part and parcel of being, I mean, everyone kind of associates like this celebrity lifestyle or being a rock star, or like moving in those circles with the accessibility? Was that your experience?
100%. I mean, you know, anybody who's, you know, cocaine, and I haven't been in the industry for a little minute, but like, I'm sure it's still the same.
Yeah.
Cocaine is no different to be like, here's a beer and here's a line. And it was really normal. And, you know, all my life, I just wanted to be thin, cool, and acceptable. And all of a sudden I met this thing called cocaine, and it was my solution to my life. Suddenly I wasn't eating the same. I felt cool and acceptable, and people wanted to be my friend because I was in a position where I could afford it. And so people wanted to be around me.
So how often do you think you were doing cocaine at that time in the early stages?
Look, initially it wasn't like I did it and then I did it every day from then on, but I was obsessed from the minute that I had it. I wasn't just like, oh, I'll have a line and enjoy my night and go home, go to bed and get on with it like everybody else. It was like, where did that shit go, and where and how can I get more of it immediately? And I was obsessed. Like, I was obsessed with it going around the room. I was obsessed when it was going to be my turn again. And I guess even though I didn't use it every day from then on, I thought about it, and I thought about when I was going to, how I was going to, and yeah, it was in my mind always.
It's so fascinating to me. There's been a research study that was done on cocaine with rats. I think a lot of people might be familiar with it. But in like a quick summary of what this research study was, is that one rat, and they gave it the option of normal water and cocaine water. And the rat drank the cocaine water, obviously, until it died because it became addicted to it. And then I can't remember the name of the scientist who came along, but someone was like, when it comes to addiction, this is a flawed study, because the study itself doesn't bring in all of the things around community. Because rats are social animals in the same way that humans are social animals. And so they did the same experiment, but they put the rat into an environment where it had all the things that would make it like a rat heaven, you know, with like games and wheels and other rats. Like, they gave it a community, and then they gave it the two sources of water and also the water that had the cocaine in it. And all of the rats tried the cocaine water, but because they had all the other things in their life that gave them purpose and made them excited to just be rats, they preferred the water in most instances. And so it was a real change on the original study.
I've literally never heard of that study.
Oh my God, it's okay. I'm going to link it in the show notes.
Super famous. It's a super famous study. Yeah.
It's a really famous study around addiction, and it's really fascinating because, you know, it looks at addiction as being a really holistic thing where it's not just because you get addicted to a thing in your life. It's not that you're just addicted to cocaine, but it also can be because you're lacking in other things in your life that give you support, that give you a feeling of a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging. For you specifically, you mentioned that addiction had been something that was a part of your whole life, that everything was to the extreme, and that when you discovered drugs, it just kind of followed a pattern that you'd already been exposed to in your life. Have you, in the self-work that you've done, figured out what is it? Like, where did that addictive personality come from? And how was that shaped in you as a person?
Look, there's lots of different ideas and theories and thoughts about addiction and ways of recovery. I am a big believer in the disease model of addiction, and I believe that I have the disease of addiction, and that I guess the best way to explain it is like when drugs hit me, a bit like someone has a peanut allergy, I have an allergic reaction. Like, it just hits my body a bit different to the way it might hit yours or somebody else's, and the obsession and the compulsion sets off and I can't stop. And, you know, it's not a curable disease in the way of there's no medication that'll make it go away forever, but it can be arrested and I can live a life in recovery from it. And that's the model that I've gone down. So I believe that was in my DNA, and it was a perfect storm in my life as, you know, a chain of events that set it off, if that makes sense.
You ended up being addicted to a horrific drug, ice. How did you get from drinking cocaine to as far as ice?
People always ask that question, and I wish it was simple. But look, my drug addiction span over the best part of 14 years. And obviously the drugs that I used and abused over those years like changed and progressed, and the people that I spent time with changed and progressed until one day, you know, I was in a situation where someone offered me meth. And by that point, my self-esteem, self-worth, and all the things that go with that were non-existent. So it wasn't even a thought. Like if in my sane, sober brain, someone said, try some meth, you'd probably go, people say that's pretty bad and your life goes to shit when you do it and you think about it. But by the point that it was offered to me, I was already too far gone to even care. I just wanted to feel better and I just wanted the pain to be taken away.
Did you realise, and I mean, not that you can call it self-sabotage because I think it goes beyond a realisation of that happening in your life, but did you know and understand at the time the impact that this was having on your life? Or did you think that you still could hold it together? Like you could hold the success down, you could do the work opportunities, you could still be a singer performing on stage? Or did you see, fuck, this is really spiraling out of control for me?
Oh, that's a great question. I was already pretty done by the time I really met Ice. You know, I did have a second go at trying to relaunch a career, but I was already gone. Like I was already so deluded in an ice addiction. I was like, yeah, I can do this. It'll be fine. What I'm about to say is controversial, but in the beginning, ice made me be better than I was before. You know, before I sort of got to ice, I was a pretty bad alcoholic. I was drinking a lot. I was doing a lot of drugs. I didn't look good. I wasn't in a good way. But when I met crystal meth, like I was productive. I started to lose more weight, which made people take me more seriously. Everyone was like, you look fantastic. I was like, yeah, I do.
Which is crazy because you know then yourself that like you've never been lower, you've never been worse or more unhealthy. And I guess that's the vicious cycle.
Yeah, but in that small window in the beginning, on the outside to everybody else, you know, everyone was like, wow, Kate's really on top of her game, until I wasn't. So I guess in answer to your question, no, I was so deluded and I'd already been in addiction for so long that my thinking was just, it was shocking.
What did rock bottom look like for you?
So I had lots and lots of rock bottoms over the years. I had lots of public rock bottoms. I got caught drug driving. I did all that all over the newspapers, lost my career, lost contracts, all that extra, like rode off cars, lost houses, lost boyfriends, lost all of that external stuff.
Far out.
Heaps of times too. And I get, you know, rehabs, all the stuff that you would assume would be enough for someone to say, yeah, probably should pull up now. That's probably enough. But the rock, I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go here, but like the rock bottom for me was my final rock bottom was a really quiet personal moment. And I was sitting on my bathroom floor. I was in a domestic violent relationship at the time. My face was a mess. I couldn't use drugs the way that I wanted to use them because my veins were all busted. And I just caught myself in the mirror and I was like, who the fuck are you? Like who and how did we get from that 18-year-old girl on Australian Idol with the blonde hair and all the opportunities at her feet to this? And I just knew in that moment that if things didn't change, I was going to die. And that was the beginning of the end of my active addiction.
How long were you addicted to meth for? I don't know if it matters. You can tell me. I don't know if it matters if you're addicted for 6 months or 12 years. I think once you hit that addiction, it's sort of the same. Is that right?
I guess I've been addicted to drugs for a really long time, but crystal, like meth or ice, whatever the fuck you want to call it, was the one that brought me to my knees. It was the one that made me do things that I didn't think I was capable of doing. It made me do behaviours. It turned me into a criminal. It turned me into some things that I still can't believe that I did. So I guess it sort of fast-tracked that internal devastation. But in answer to your question, I used meth every day for about 6 years.
So how were you funding that?
Not well, but I was obviously on the dole at the time, and that didn't get me very far, but it wasn't doing anything good. Like, I did a lot of crime because that was all that was left for me to do.
So sorry.
Kate, I also want you to know, like, I'm so grateful for you sharing this and being so honest about it. I grew up in a household with a stepdad who was a heroin addict.
Yeah, right.
And I very much understand that the person that people are when they are an addict, and I'm talking hard drug addict, the way that they behave and the things that they do aren't congruent with the person that they are at heart. And it makes you do fucking horrible things because you throw your ethics out the window. You throw your person out the window because you are so hell-bent on the next hit or the next. It's like you lose a part of yourself to addiction.
100%.
And I think there's something incredibly powerful about being able to drag yourself out of that hole, because not everybody has the ability to do that. But the honesty around it is something that I can see how hard it is for you to share it. But genuinely, I'm very, very grateful for you sharing that part of your story.
Well, it's the reality of it. I guess a lot of people think that addiction comes, to be an addict or whatever. You have to come from a broken home or abuse or all of that sort of stuff. I grew up in a house with a mum, a dad, a brother, sister, surrounded by love, on paper, all the things that suggest that I should have been a happy, healthy, balanced kid, adult in my life. But that just wasn't my experience. And the thing about addiction and the thing that I've learned over the years of recovery and the people that I've met in recovery is addiction don't give a fuck who you are. It doesn't care. I don't care who your mum is, who your dad is, how much money you had in the bank, what school, or how smart you think you are. If it gets you, you got. And it can take you places it took me places that I didn't think I was capable of being. And it's not, in this person that I sit here today, like, I can't fathom doing those things. I just couldn't even imagine it.
And there's so many families who deal with addiction in their family, whether it's a cousin, a sister, a brother, a son, like a daughter. There is so many families across Australia that addiction rips apart in different ways. What was the impact it had on your family? When you say you were so close, I'm sure your parents had moments where they were like, fuck, how are we here?
Oh my God, that, there's no rule book on how to raise any kid, let alone one that turns into a drug addict.
Yeah.
And that's not something that they'd ever had in their lives. And so knowing where to go and to get the right help was really hard for them. And I know for many years they thought they were loving me, but they were just actually enabling me for a long, long time. But I guess the impact on them, my parents are one thing, but I think the impact that it had on my siblings who were younger than me and what I stole from them and their childhood and their upbringing, is horrendous and very traumatic for them too.
Has it impacted your relationship now with your siblings?
It did for a long time. My brother and my sister and I had a bigger gap when we were kids, about 8 years, so we probably weren't that close when we were younger. But my brother and I were very close. And I just did all the things that an addict did. I lied to him, I stole from him, and he watched what I did to my parents. And eventually he always loved me, but he hated me. He couldn't stand the sight of me, didn't want to know me, didn't want to be around me. And he was just so angry. And in the end, he admitted that he was just terrified. He just was so scared that he was going to wake up one day and his sister was going to be dead.
You just said your family, your parents were trying to help you, but in fact they were enabling you. In what way were they enabling you? Because I know there'd be a lot of people listening right now that have no idea what to do, but all they want to do is help somebody with an addiction. So I'd love to know what that looked like, and then how you got to the point where they were able to help you and get you on the path to sobriety.
It's super important. And I guess I knew all those years, and I got myself in all kinds of situations and whatever, but I always knew my mum would come and get me, no matter what happened. And of course she would, she's my mum and she loved me, but, or I would get in a debt or I would need money or whatever it might be, and they would just try and fix it for me. They would just go, yep, we'll fix it, because, I'd burn a relationship to the ground, and my mum and dad had come and got me and brought me home to Bendigo and set me up in a house and did all of these things where they just thought they were trying to help, but inevitably, that was enabling, because I just knew that I'd be okay and I'd always land on my feet. And eventually they went and got their own help. They got really educated around addiction and the best way to support somebody in addiction. But also they went and got their own support as into how to take care of themselves and my brother and sister at the same time. And those two things combined really changed. I guess it really was the catalyst and one of the big things that changed to help me get better, because my mum got shown, I guess, how to make really firm boundaries and then hold the boundaries and be like, Kate, I'm here for you when you're ready to be right. And when you're ready, I'm here with open arms and I will always love you, but I'm not going to support you using anymore. They definitely got support. So there's a lady in Melbourne who was a big part of saving my life. Her name's Belinda Walsh. She has a rehab called Sober Living Rehab. And that was where I went after my lockdown facility. And she really helped my family know where to draw the line. But I guess, of course, when you ring your mum and you say, I'm starving, I've got no food, I haven't got anywhere to live, she's going to want to give you money. But the difference was she'd go, no worries, Kate. And 9 times out of 10, none of those things were true. I just wanted money. So she would go, no worries, Kate, I'll meet you at the supermarket and I'll buy you a bag of groceries. And there's the difference. But yeah, professionals, I think getting somebody who knows how to show you how to love an addict the way they need to be loved, not how they think they need to be loved, is the difference.
There's something really different about your story in that so much of this happened on a public scale. I mean, so much addiction happens behind closed doors. It's really shameful. It's something that families don't talk about. When you are someone who is a public figure and you're dealing with this in your life, and then the things that you do get splattered across the Daily Mail or whatever other publication has picked it up, how did you reconcile with that and with the public perception around the person that you were and where you were at in your life?
It took time. It took a lot of healing. But you know, the thing at the end of the day that I needed to make peace with my story for me first. And I guess that's a big part of the reason that I did the first season of Why Do I Feel This Way? Because when I came out the other end, the public and the media, all they know is this girl from Australian Idol got caught using drugs, selling drugs, whatever the hell I was doing, and weapons and all of that la-di-da stuff, and then she disappeared. And then I popped back up, however many years later, a different version of myself, and everybody wanted a piece of that story, and I don't trust the media as far as I can kick them to share it. So,
of course,
you know, it was my way of taking my power back and going, yeah, all those things did happen. I did do all those things, and this is why, this is how it got there, and this is then how I got out. But you're 100% right. Like, my story is actually not that outrageous in the world of addiction. It's really common. I'm nothing special. Like, you hear my stories every day when you are in the circles of addiction and recovery and rehabs. Like, it's a run-of-the-mill story. But I guess because I was in the public eye, it just seemed so much more shocking.
You don't need us to tell you this, but I think it is special, and I don't think you are like every second person that's addicted, because not everyone pulls themselves out like you have and recreates their life and the story that they want. What was that recovery sobriety journey like in terms of, were there relapses? How long was it? Were you always in a rehab? Were you at home weaning off the drugs?
So I've had 8 rehab admissions over the course of my addiction. And the first one I was about 24. And I was like, I'm not, you guys are gross, you know, and I heard all these stories about all of this stuff and all of these people doing all of that wild stuff. And I was like, I'm just a young girl, too much money, you guys got no idea. And I was warned that if I went back out, my life would turn to shit, and it did. But the last time that I went to rehab, something changed for me, and I just knew that I needed to hand over my life and my will to somebody else, because my decision-making and my best thinking got me to where it got me. So I just needed to accept that I had no capabilities of making any good choices for myself, and I just handed it over to the rehab, and I did what I was told, essentially. And that was that I needed to just take my time and go slow. And I did. I didn't have a phone for a really long time. I didn't have social media for a really long time, because I just didn't have that space between thought and action. Like, for a really long time, it was like, yes, going to see somebody who's using drugs seems like a really great idea. And I would believe that. I can do it. I've got this. But no, I did not have anything. So it just was a matter of taking my time and finding the right people to help me in my journey and trusting them with my life until I could be trusted with my life myself.
Kate, how did it impact your friendships?
Oh, God, I didn't have any friends by the time, you know. Either the true friends that I had over the course of my life, I'd pushed away because I was a shit person to be around, and I didn't want them to see me in that way. And the people that I used with, there were a lot of people that were just like me, you know, just people that had ended up there by chance, but I couldn't continue those friendships because it wasn't safe for me. So I literally cut my life. You know, I left the day that I went to Melbourne to go to rehab. You know, I packed up my house with what little possessions I had left, gave them to my mum, changed my phone number, deleted my iCloud account so I couldn't retrack anybody, and started again.
Is it an everyday battle? As someone that was so addicted, is there ever a time that comes where you don't consciously think about it anymore, or, you know, you can get on with your life without having to say to yourself, you're good, you've got this? Or is it something that you never fully 100% heal from?
Well, I haven't thought that drugs and alcohol were a good idea or a solution to my life for a really long time. And I don't get up in the morning and think, fuck, I'd like to use drugs today. But I do respect my addiction, and I know that I'm always only a couple of shit decisions and mistakes away from picking up, and that's my responsibility, and I take that really seriously. Like, it might not have been my fault or my choice to be an addict, but I'm in recovery, and it's certainly 100% my choice and my responsibility to stay clean. So yeah, I do a lot of things to maintain my sobriety so I don't end up back in a spot where I think that drugs is the solution.
Can you talk us through a little bit around what were the steps that you implemented? I know you said you blocked people and you were in the facility. How long were you in the facility for? And what was kind of like the rules? When you say you handed your life over to somebody else to make the decisions for you, what were those decisions?
So I'm a hopeless love addict too. So that was a big part of my recovery. Like, no men was a big one. No, I needed time to no, because sickness attracts sickness in relationships. So anyone that I was going to be in any kind of relationship probably wasn't that great either.
Couldn't be well.
So yeah, look, there was obviously that. I didn't have social media. You know, I was really selective about who I spent time with, the places that I went, all that kind of stuff. Like, I obviously wasn't going into bars or anything like that. But yeah, I just ran everything by somebody, a trusted person. And I know that sounds crazy, but as I said, I just couldn't trust myself. But I was in the rehab. I was in a lockdown hospital for 6 weeks. And then I was in like a transition house for about a year, maybe a bit more. And then I became a support worker in the rehab. So then I was sort of like a lead tenant and helped look after the new people that came in. I think, so all up, I was in treatment for a little over 2 years.
If you're someone who can identify that you are an addict, whether it's drugs or alcohol or whatever it is, that the thing that someone is addicted to, are you always an addict? Even if you're in recovery, is that always something that you will have a weakness to potentially fall back into if you are not making the conscious decisions and choices around your life?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, some people don't like to identify as an addict after they get clean, and that's personal choice, but I'm an addict in recovery. And that's just how I am. I'll always be an addict, and I have to watch. As I said to you, when I put down the drugs, there was a whole range of other behaviours that I did addictively. And it was like whack-a-mole, you know. It was like I'd get one under control and I'd have to knock the other one down. And that ranges from all the really scary ones like drugs, alcohol, even gambling, you know, to relationships, to shopping, to social media destroys my life. You know, I cannot do it manageably. I just can't, which is a really hard one because it has to be a part of my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you think you were always that way, or do you think this addiction to everything else in your life is a byproduct of being addicted to drugs and alcohol?
When I look back over my life, as I said, I did everything addictively forever.
Even as a kid?
Even as a kid. By the age of 5, I was lying and stealing and eating food in secret in a really shameful, strange way, like for no real reason. And, well, there was a reason and I didn't know it at the time, but I always was looking for something outside of myself to help self-regulate and soothe the way that I felt. And it started with food and it progressed to boys, to money, to all the things over the years.
You said you were a love addict. You now are in a lovely relationship and you're a mum. How did you meet your partner?
I met my partner online.
So did I. Don't worry. The only people I've ever dated have been online.
Yeah. Well, I just did. I'd been in a really inappropriate, quick relationship that was not well nor healthy. And again, I just attracted the same old Kate stuff. Except I recognised it and I got out of it, but it left me like hurting. So I was like, get online. I was online. I'll just try some dating sites. I was online for a day. It wigged me out. But I somehow ended up with this guy's number and it just happened.
Quick mover.
It was a quick
I was
mover.
on there for 10 years and you do it for 24 hours?
No, I was like, when there was too much, I was like, this is too many. I don't know what to do here. And I panicked.
You're like, I
so-
just
but
need one.
I panicked. I
that'll
just picked
do
one.
me. Just make me stop feeling shit about this other guy. And it turned out he was pretty good. So, you know, and that was just before COVID, and yeah, we just clicked and hit it off. And I guess COVID fast tracked our relationship as far as getting to know one another, because it was like either we're going to hang out a lot or this is probably not going to work out.
What was it like when you meet someone new and you have to talk about the person that you were? You've almost lived these two lives now. You're like, this is the person I am and this is the person I was. How do people receive that? And in particular, how did your partner receive that information?
It's a tricky one because you don't want to go too far down a relationship, starting a relationship and go, oh yeah, by the way, all of these things. That seems a bit unfair.
You also don't want to open with it.
No, that's not a good opener. I'm okay now, but I also have the potential to be a crazy drug addict. Really, it's up to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I gave him, because obviously he was like, he drank, which was, well, he still does drink, which was an interesting one for me. I had to say, I don't drink and these are the reasons why. I didn't go into the depths of it to start with. And I guess as we got to know each other and things became more serious, I had to say, hey, this is why I don't drink and these are the places that drinking can take me. And yeah, we just muddled our way through it and now he knows all of it.
Does it bother you now when he drinks?
It can do. It doesn't bother me when he drinks necessarily, and he's one of those people that I don't understand in the world that can come home and have one beer and be done with it. Like, I don't get people that can do that. But he's normal like that. But it can, like if we're like around Christmas time and those times where there's lots of drinking and lots of socialising and lots of partying, it does get tiring. But we've just had to talk about that over the years and find a compromise to what works. And I haven't, so he doesn't feel like he's had to compromise who he is and I haven't had to compromise who I am.
Kate, how has motherhood changed you? I feel like everybody goes through these massive transitions when they become a mum. But I can only imagine when you are juggling and have juggled such a huge self-discovery, self-identity shift. Like there's already been so many changes that it would impact you in ways that maybe it doesn't impact everyone.
I don't know how it impacts everybody else, so I don't know the answer to that bit, but I guess it's been one of the most profound experiences in my life. And I thought I'd miss the chance to be a mum. I made one of the only sane, good choices that I made through my using was I made sure there was absolutely no way I was going to get pregnant because I didn't want to bring a little person into my chaos. Like I felt really, and I know it happens and I'm not judging anybody for that, but for me it just was a really important thing that I destroyed my own life but nobody else's. Well, not somebody that I was responsible for anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, he's taught me so much. Look, I think it's the first time I've ever loved somebody more than myself. Addicts are notoriously really selfish people. And he's taught me so much about myself and also shown me how far I've come. Like I get up every morning and show up for this little person, and it makes me emotional to say it still, but like I show up for this little person really well every day. You know what I mean? I would make mistakes. All mums make mistakes. I'm not perfect, but yeah, he's changed my life in more ways than I think I'll ever understand. And also, I think the hardest one, I lost my mum when I was 13 weeks pregnant with my son.
I'm so sorry.
I think I understand her pain more than I ever could have, I think the things that she did and the things she went through and the extremes that she went through I understand on a much deeper level.
Makes you appreciate them a lot more when you're in that position and you know what you would do for your child.
Oh my God, I understand her on a whole other level.
How old were you when you became a mum?
What am I, 37?
This could be a really naive, stupid question, but does that level of drug abuse have any effect on fertility? Obviously your health overall it does, but is there any link directly between fertility?
It wasn't for me, no. I've got polycystic ovarian syndrome. That was the only thing that was going to affect my fertility, and I was the healthiest and fittest I'd ever been in a normal way when I got pregnant. And I think, but look, I also know how lucky I am at the other end of addiction. Like I have come out relatively unscathed with my health and my physical body. Obviously, there was plenty of trauma that I had to muddle my way through, but like on medically, like I came out really lucky.
What is something that you would like people to understand about addiction who either may have judgment towards people who are addicts or may not, may listen to this and think, God, this could never happen to me or could never happen to people that I associate with? What would be the thing that you think most people would find surprising about addiction?
Well, that's just simply not true. Like, that's a really naive way of thinking. Like, when you see an addict in the street, everyone's got a story. Nobody sat up in kindergarten, put their hand up when the teacher said, what do you want to be when you grow up? No one ever said, I want to be a hopeless junkie and destroy mine and everybody's life. So no one ever did that. You know what I mean? There was a story and there's a reason that they're there, and you don't know that. So treat them like you would, how you'd want your daughter or your son or your mum or your relative or your best friend to be treated if they were in that position. They're just people that are hurting and that need help. Doesn't mean that their behaviours are acceptable or excusable or any of that stuff. But, there's underneath all of that ugliness and shit is normally just a person in a shit ton of pain.
What would you say to someone now? What advice would you give to someone that might be in a really dark time or starting to or be in the depths of addiction?
As long as your 2 feet are on the ground, there's always hope. It doesn't matter how far down the hole you go or how many mistakes or how much shit you've lost or whatever you've done, like, it's never too late and there's always hope and there is help. Find your people. I think the best thing, rehab and all that was great for me, but finding a community of people, they say, back to that study that they did with the rat, they say the opposite of addiction is connection.
Yeah.
And the best thing I did was find a community of people that got me, didn't judge me, that I could talk about who I was and what I was going through and what was going through in my crazy brain, and they just met me with love and acceptance. So find your people that you can talk to and that get you, and that's the first step.
Kate, can you tell us what role music plays in your life now? After all these years and everything that you've been through, what impact does it still have for you?
So it fills my cup these days. When I came out of, addiction, everyone's like, you're going to get back into music? I was like, absolutely fucking not. Like, I hate that. Don't even talk to me about music ever again. And I really hated it when I first came out. And then I didn't want to know about it. I just started to do it for me and, for fun and for joy. And I realised how much I love it. And I realised that I'm pretty good at it, which only took me 15 years and a whole lot of shit to come to realise. But, and it brings other people joy too. So I do it when I can, however I can. I don't have any great desires to change the world or to, sell #1 singles. I don't live for that anymore. Other things drive me now, and work around addiction and being able to help people in that space is really important to me these days. It makes it all worth something, I guess. But yeah, music just brings me joy in whatever capacity I get to do it.
Do you feel like you've reached a place where you truly feel like you can be happy in the life that you've created for yourself now?
Yeah, I do, for the most part. Life is life and life is shit sometimes, and everybody goes through times that hurt and life throws curveballs and all of that kind of stuff. But for the most part, I wake up every day happy with who I am, happy with my life. I don't feel the need to run away from my life and who I am anymore. And, even when the shit does come up in my life, I feel like I manage it with dignity and grace to the best of my ability. And I couldn't, from a hopeless junkie in the bathroom 6.5 years ago, like, to be the person that I am now is a miracle. So I'm just grateful for my life.
Thank you so much for sharing today, because I can't fathom how hard that is to just be so open and raw about the lowest time in your life. And you have done so with such grace and with the purpose of helping other people. And that's truly a remarkable thing. So thank you for being so vulnerable and open.
Oh, thanks, girls. Thanks for having me.